Hey, let's go. Uh, You know, there's a certain aspect of it that I understand, um, but how are they going to respond if one of their kids gets sick and dies? I mean, there's not a lot of up until about what a few months ago, there wasn't a lot of evidence that kids were being infected, even high school kids. But now there is.
Mhm.
Now there's a lot of kids that are being affected, and I'm a little concerned that if you're the one that makes that call and you're the one that stands up at the podium and says, let our kids play because the pressure's coming down or because you're selfish and you want to get it done, how are you going to deal with the outcome of that? How are you going to deal with being watching somebody get really sick or have it
Right.
affect 10 kids on your team, and you have 3 or 4 games where you can't even field a relatively serious varsity team. I mean, those kind of things that are going to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody's thought that stuff through or whether they're just like, it's like everything else nowadays. There's a lot of people that just want what they want, and it doesn't matter what reality brings. It doesn't matter what's going on with the facts of the matter. And
Yeah.
so again, they're smart people. They're none of these people that I see talking about this high school football stuff are dumb. I mean, they're all smart people that I know they care about their kids. I don't have any misconceptions that they don't have some sort of care for their kids, but
Yeah.
they're beating their chests and screaming like it's obvious, and it's not obvious. Again, I don't know. I don't know. Go ahead.
I think having um, a primetime athlete who what I considered a very relevant athlete, um, was very it was a very drunk experience for me. Like we spent money crossing the country during club sports, playing soccer tournaments, and we went here and there and everywhere, and we that was our vacations. We never we used to joke. I used to have this weird thing where like, okay, we're gonna go to Colorado and we're gonna play soccer, but we're gonna go to as many colleges as we can and buy a T-shirt. Like, okay, like somehow the T-shirt's gonna translate into the kid wanting to go there. And that was just my little way to justify it. But there was some inebriation to the whole thing, if you know what I mean. As the your child has success and stuff like that. I don't think I was clear. I
Right.
think I don't think I did a good job of modeling sane behavior, not sane behavior, but balanced behavior. And what I think possibly, if I'm a pop psychologist, is that you say, okay, we're not going to have this opportunity because of COVID. It's not anyone's fault. It is what it is. And the kid says, but this is my identity. This is who I am. Okay. And then that breaks everyone's heart. And then you bend your rules. Right. But I think the bigger point is, why isn't your son or daughter's identity bigger than the game? Why isn't there poetry? Why isn't there academics? Why isn't there music? Why isn't and again, I sound like a total asshole because I did not do this at, by with any kind of gusto. But I mean, that to me globally, that's the bigger sadness, right? Is that we're compromising. Your dad would have said no. You Sergeant Willig would have said no. That's the most ridiculous thing. We're not doing it. And probably there's a possibility that he wouldn't even have explained it with you. He would have just said no, and that's final, and figure out something else.
It's funny that you say that, because I think I told you the story that he yanked me off the basketball team because I got a C- in a class at the quarter,
Yeah.
and it was my senior year of basketball, and he's like, you're not going to ruin your opportunities, and yanked
Yeah.
me off the basketball team, which is and I love that, but it was you know
Well, you didn't love it at the time, I'm sure.
no, man, no, I loved basketball.
Oh, you love
I
basketball,
loved
right, right, right,
playing.
right, right, right.
Yeah, I mean, it was like it was at the time in the middle of the season, it was almost as important as football was to me.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Right.
there wasn't a big delineation. It was just that was my next sport. You know, and I
Yeah.
was doing the same things there that I was trying to do on the football field. But but the thing is that you have a good perspective looking back.
Right. Looking back, I
And
was completely
seeing
screwed though in the
that,
middle.
that's always a good, you always have a little bit more insight, and I can see that you have probably a better opinion now than maybe you did back then.
Well, I have my cousins, my cousins all have kids now that are younger than high school. And there's a good number of little people that are darn fine athletes, and all I tell them, I just beg them, hey man, do a bunch of things, man. Play, if you're, sports is fine, but do 3 sports. Don't just do 1 sport,
Right.
do multiple things, don't let the kid get locked in, and because basically what happened with Kyle is he played soccer. The coach recognized his raw talent, and soccer became the first girl that kissed Kyle, if you know what I'm saying. Like, he married the first girl that kissed him. I mean, he never even played
Right.
football before we were playing club softball. He
Oh,
never
yeah.
even played basketball before we were playing club.
Right.
And we were enthusiastic and we were doing it. And to my defense, he said, Pop, I want to play trumpet in the band at school. And I immediately went and bought him a trumpet instantly. I mean, of course, I have no ability to make that flourish. I just said, okay, practice, or, here, I can buy you some records of the big bands or the ska bands or something. Like, I don't know how to make you more enthusiastic about playing the trumpet. He just
Right.
wanted to be with his friends, and and he said he wanted to. Servite had a classical guitar. They have a huge classical guitar program. It's a 4-year program. It's pretty significant. And he said, "Oh yeah," and I'm like, "Boom, let's get you a guitar," and he's dabbled. He never got into the program because he was only a freshman, and he ended up moving on. But I just beg my cousins. I'm like, man, guys, I have the one cousin whose son is a terrific baseball player, and I'm going, you guys are going all over the world, they're, the kids go to a tournament and they win a ring, this big old Super Bowl ring and all this kind of weird thing. And, looking at him from my high school eyes, I'm going, well, his bat speed could be faster. He doesn't run well. Did you ever think about running track, or did you ever think about some explosive training? And I feel like I got tricked into a fantastic cross training situation with soccer, because the soccer really helped Kyle as a receiver and a defensive back, and controlling his body and all those things. And it just so happened it was a great cross training. And I tell that to my cousin, I'm like, just put him in soccer. He gets the lungs, he gets the legs, he gets the balance. He can, I send him have you ever seen the Urban Meyer speech where he talks about the dual sport athletes and stuff that he
Yeah.
recruits? He goes, I got 4 guys on my team that played 1 sport. These guys are from freaking West Pennsylvania. They're the athlete. They're
Right.
not the quarterback. They're the best athlete, and they need to play every sport, and they do, and that makes them great athletes. I mean, Chuck, I don't mean to take over the conversation, but I had girls on my softball team that would come to practice and had, as freshmen in high school, had repetitive injuries, like wrist injuries and stuff from the constant swings and all the things they were doing with their club teams for 8 hours
Right.
on Sunday. Then they were coming to my practice, and then, forget shoulders and elbows. I mean, we're talking wrists and backs and knees.
Sure.
And if you change it up, if you go out for the volleyball team, only good things can happen from that. Like, in my opinion, it's like, Kyle was a senior, and he was done with football, and I was like, get your ass out to track. If you're serious about this, go run track. I go, first of all, it's the social event of the year. You run for 30 seconds and you talk to chicks for 3 hours. I mean, I go,
Right.
there's nothing wrong with that. You can learn how to run, get faster, prepare yourself for college. And he was like, oh, okay, sure. Okay. That sounds good, Dad. He wasn't too hip on the outfits, but
Yeah, well, that's and I think those things are all going on in a lot of households. I think those conversations are being
yeah,
had, but I also think that there's a lot of parents who are, you know, they're as much caught up in the why can't they play as the
100%.
kids are, you know. And I know the kids are upset, but it's the parents that are screaming and yelling, you know, they're taking away our kids' lives. And you know, they're not really. It's
Right.
everybody's suffering together. It's not something that is exclusive to your kid
Right.
because he plays ball. You know, what about the mom who can't take her kid to childcare because
Right.
they're shutting down childcares? And I mean, everybody is immensely affected. And I don't, again, I don't begrudge anybody who's got an opinion and
Right.
wants to question the authority of it. You know,
Absolutely.
that's what needs to be done. But you know, what end? You know, to what end? And we'll see how that all plays out. That's why I'm so interested to see
Yeah.
what happens on these rallies. That, you know, what's going to be the point? You know, and what are they going to say? And so it's going to be an interesting
I mean,
process.
I envision a lot of passionate hysterics about the point. We got to let them play, and there's not going to. I don't think there's going to be the long game. You know, I think it's going to be the short game, and I think that's again, that's the saddest part. And again, we're lucky because we're not in the mix. You know, we're not in the middle. We're not up to our knees. You know, I don't have a kid that's sad and depressed, and I've already missed that opportunity to have a more well-rounded situation. I mean, I just I had this extremely stressful situation where I was asked by one of my softball players to write a letter of recommendation to Stanford. And I've written letters of recommendation before. It's part of my job as a teacher. I understand that. But Stanford, and I'm like, well, where else are we going to? No, she goes, no, Stanford. I'm like, okay, that's not the way I roll.
Right.
And looking at her resume and looking at her stuff, I'm like, Jesus, she can freaking get in. Like, this is legit. Like, this is not a joke. And
Yeah.
she was, I'm not going to say her name, but she's like one of 7 kids, and they were homeschooled all the way to high school. And then in high school, she said, okay, I want to go to school. And they went to school, and she's super genius, and she's after all the experience. And I thought it was interesting because one of the things she said was, at my house, we had to pick something to do. And I picked softball. And she had never played softball before, Chuck. I had her on the Jays, and she's very talented. She's very, very fast, and she was the most coachable kid I've ever coached in my life. She would look at me and go, okay, got it. And then like
Right.
almost like a robot do it. And I would say stuff to the team globally, like, if you're not playing, you might want to take some extra fly balls at the end of practice. Well, sure enough, this girl would take fly balls. I mean, her character level was so high. It's not even, she was almost like an alien. And,
Right.
but I love that. And I said, why did you only pick, like, why could you only pick softball? And she goes, well, we just didn't have enough money to do 15,000 things. We just, I was the one that picked softball. My sister was a track girl. My other sister did music and all that. And then she had an entire life at her church, where she was involved with the soundboards and stuff. And I was like, oh shit, maybe she can edit our podcast. But like, she's into like she sits behind the board when she's not up there acting and she's not up there singing, but she's behind the board and making sure. She wrote this whole thing about double and triple checking and redundancies and making sure that the technology wasn't the reason that, my heart was like beating, I was like,
Yeah.
this kid's unbelievable. And I just thought that was cool because like there was like she was at school, and a lot of people say, well, I'm in homeschool so I can control the environment. She was at school to witness me as a teacher, not to learn. She knew as much about history as I did, or I do. Like, her content level, but she wanted to see what Gordon was about and that kind of teacher. And then there's an AP teacher that's going to be different, maybe wound a little tighter in different ways. And the expectations here and the expectations there, and reading the room, and
So did
fascinating.
did that make it easier for you to write the letter of recommendation then, because
It
you had
did.
all those?
The more I learned about it, I was like, whew. And I ended up, breaking a couple rules on the letter. I made it very personal. I extended it past 1 page just because I thought I had to. And um, she let me off the hook because I guess she's putting in for University of Colorado at Boulder, and which is one of the places I love. That campus is unbelievable, and I think she's going to get into Stanford. But
That's fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it
Well, and
was
the
interesting to see
well-rounded
that. Mhm.
the well-rounded is what they're looking for. I mean, there's 100,000 kids that have 4 point plus
Right.
grade point averages. What's the difference going to
Right.
be in, playing a sport, being a student council, and
Right.
those kind of things. I'm really proud and respectful of the of our school, because they have that's the bottom line minimum, is
Right.
let's get that kid to be able to do multiple things.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, I've had president, vice president, or treasurer on our football team, for like 6 years, and one of those guys, and they did it basically because they were turned on by the teachers and the moderators of those groups, and then and they knew how important that was. Our expanded horizons is who handles our kids college applications and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
monitors and follows, and they, right from the start, when I sat down and talked to them when I took the job, is, do you care about your kids going to college? And I was like,
Yeah.
what kind of a question is that for you to ask me? Of course I care about our kids. Well, we just want to make sure, because we want athletes to be a part of student council, and we want them to be in the drama club, and we want them to do those
Yeah.
different things. um, and I was, like I said, extremely impressed by that, because that's
Right.
that's what they need. If they can do a good job in the classroom, then they got an opportunity, even if they're a little bit lacking in the classroom, to have all those other skills of doing all those and participating in all those things. That's where leaders come from, I think.
Well, I feel like and I think that's how it has to be, because and just circling back to having Rick on last week at Coach's Corner, where he's talking about, yeah, there's places for anybody to play. Every single person on my team could play in college somewhere. I mean, this is Division 1, or division. This is parochial high school football. We're teaching the kids, and they're going to have the equipment to go anywhere. And if that means it's a Division 2 NAIA, or a Division 1 NAIA, or a Division 3, if they want to, they can play. You made a huge point about that. If you love it, you'll love it, and that's it. It doesn't matter where.
Yeah.
And I think that part is not being communicated to these kids, that are playing in these club sports. It's like, okay, dude, I think Rick said you go on the clock, and that's it. You either are or you're not. And I watched that game last night, Chuck, and I could not believe that. I don't know what you got out of it, but I could not believe the team speed on both sides. It was frightening how
Yeah.
hard those guys were putting their foot in the ground and making a cut. I watched a couple DBs, and I was like, I don't know if I could play DB. Those guys would. There was none of this jukey, shimmy, shimmy that we had back in the 80s and 90s. There's no shimmy.
Right.
It was power.
Mm-hmm.
Put your foot in the ground and just rip. And I haven't watched a bunch of football this year, and I was like, wow. And I don't think I would watch those. Those are two of my least favorite teams, probably. And I just go, I was completely wrong. When I was a senior in high school, I was completely wrong. I mean, there was better things out there for me than
Yeah.
having those crazy dreams.
Well, but you don't know, I mean, and
Yeah.
parents don't know. I was the oldest of 6 boys.
Right.
My parents didn't know.
Right.
They didn't know to reach out to colleges and talk to people and
Right.
find out what the deal was. There was no recruiting guidelines, and now there's a lot of cool resources for parents to have, but that wasn't available back then. So if you couldn't afford to send your kids to school and your kid was a good athlete, well, that's where you pushed them.
Right.
And you were excited about that, and you
Right.
got behind that. There wasn't anybody, again, I don't think there was anybody telling my parents, yeah, he should be in student council as well.
Right.
That'll really bolster his opportunities. Like, he's a good football player, and he's got a decent grade point average, and there wasn't.
Yeah, you would have been an amazing class president for sure.
Well, and there, and school wasn't overly hard for me, so I
Right.
was fortunate. I'd like to say I was this, I worked really, really hard at it, and I didn't,
Me
but
either.
I was fortunate that it came semi-naturally to me. And
Mhm.
like I said, until I, got my C- or D or whatever that was, and then my dad yanked me off I didn't have much trouble. I think I can remember one class, that was a
Right.
problem. But again, I loved being around those people that were in drama.
Yeah.
And I loved going and watching, the girls do hijinks and that kind of stuff. That was all
Yeah.
fun. I mean,
Right.
and they all looked like they were having fun. And, I volunteered to do lights and stuff one time. And,
Yeah.
just because I was like,
Paint
this
the
seems like really
sets.
cool. Well, and there's, there's
Beautiful
9,000,
babies. Yeah.
9,000 girls out there. That was a cool thing as well. But,
Oh
but I
yeah.
mean, that's the thing is that parents don't always know. So again, when
Right.
you get a kid who's got a chance in sports and you got these guys beating down your door from the 7-on-7 teams and the Nike combines that we talked about and those kind of things, of course you're going to want to push them toward that. And of course you get to this point now where a parent goes, oh my God, I put all my eggs in the football basket and
Right.
now there's no football season.
It's
What
almost a bad parenting, in my opinion.
it
You
panic.
set your kid up for failure. It's like rolling. It's like roulette or something like that. You're going what, like it. So I talked to James Sams, he's a buddy of mine. And we're educators, and he's a principal. And I talked to
Yeah,
him.
throw up guy.
Throw up guy, great story, right? You guys have to go back in the archives for that one. But he went. I played ball with him at ELAC, and then he went to Occidental, Division III, one of the best educations in the West.
Yeah.
And I went my way on the more football side, and I talked to him. He's like, dude, I had the time of my life. I had the time of my life. I got in the weight room because I wanted to, and I didn't. I was better and smarter than a lot of guys, and I was quicker and tougher and stronger. And I don't know. There's something to being the big fish in a little pond, or
Sure.
I don't even know what his idea was. But if you would have told me, if I could have a magic wand or a crystal ball and say, look, Tom, here's what's going to happen. You're gonna play football at St. Paul, and you're gonna have a great career, and then you're gonna go to Fort Lewis College, Division II in Colorado,
Right.
and you're gonna be a starter from the beginning, which that would have been amazing, right? You're going to be a freshman starter, and you're going to play for 4 years, and you're going to get banged up, and then you're going to be done. And and you're never going to leave Colorado because it's so bitching out there, or Flagstaff, or and your life is going to be better, and you're going to meet your wife, and you're going to have kids, and you're going to grow up in I would be like, okay, fuck SC, fuck Notre Dame,
Right.
that's a great deal,
Sure.
um, and I just, and that would have taken away some of this. I wouldn't say I would work less hard, but I'd be calmer. My life would have been, maybe my quality of life would have been slightly better at St.
Well,
Paul.
I mean, if you're
Yeah.
if you're shooting for the D1 deal and you're
Yeah.
shooting for the top of the food chain, it's a stressful operation. It's a stressful life. It's there's a lot of huge competition for that, and not
Yeah.
everybody that deserves it makes it. Not everybody that's worthy of it gets there.
Right.
It takes a little bit of luck and a timing and all that kind of good stuff. So
But I think that the third part of the triangle is I worked hard and had benefits of working hard because I had these incredibly astronomical sort of ideas, right? To be at the top of the pyramid. And I behaved in that manner, which is fine. But I think the more valuable lesson is you need to work that way, even though you're going to go to Fort Lewis, right? That should just be your mode of operation, because what happened when football was done. In my situation, I felt like football was kind of abruptly taken away. I mean, I was planning on playing some more. I had 2 more years to play, and
right.
thank God you guys were there and I could coach. I had that same Jones, but like, I mean, it just
No,
seems
it's
like,
an interesting process. Who knows where you end up on the life's
yeah,
ladder of success. It's
yeah,
just it's hard to tell. And again, I think that the struggles in your life seem to be more apparent in your grown-up life as you mature. Those
yeah,
struggles seem to be more prevalent in your experience than if you would have had that success all the way up and through. And I people ask me a lot of times about about going to NAU, and I was, because everybody kind of assumed that I was going to get at least a Pac-10 kind of a
yeah,
deal, and
yeah. You play
you
in the
know and
Shrine, yeah,
and yeah, and all that kind of stuff. And um I was, they were really trying to convince me to go to junior college, and I was
oh,
like, and my dad, obviously, my mom and dad were like, are you nuts? This is a $30,000 a year or whatever it
right,
was scholarship. You're not going to go and on the hopes that you're going to make it. And, and their foresight was interesting, because now I know what happens to a lot of kids. You go to a local JC and you're living at home, you have a tendency to have a lot of distractions, and
Oh,
you end up
buddy.
going in different directions. But, so what the point was, is when I got there, when I got to NAU, I realized it took every bit of energy that I had, and excitement that I had to be able to make it there.
Yeah.
And I don't think I tried any less, or had
Right.
any less of a struggle, or kind of let down and went, oh, this is easy. It was just as hard. I mean,
Yeah.
the one thing I learned is that, in Division 1 AA at that point, at least at our school, you know, the first teams were comparable to
Same.
a lot of the
Same.
D1 schools.
Same.
The difference was the depth and the guys behind that, could come in and play during a game.
Yeah, we had 3 NFL players on our team, Chuck. We had
Yeah.
3 NFL players,
Well,
on our team.
Tom, I swear, I talked to somebody the other day and we were laughing because we were talking, and we went back and counted, and there were like 12 guys off my freshman team that played in the NFL or the Canadian Football League.
Wow. What an incredible
and those are guys
recruiting
those are guys that played.
Yeah.
And had at least a year in the league, and some that played longer than that, and a couple that were, one was the MVP of the Canadian Football League, and that
Nice.
kind of stuff. But I mean, so that kind of competition was,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think it wasn't noticeable to me. I would have never known the difference, so, getting to be involved in that level, I never really looked back and went, oh man, I'm really kind of disappointed. No, I don't. I got to play and,
Yeah.
see my career through. So I was fortunate in that sense.
I think that, I love, it was refreshing to see Rick be so chill about things, because I don't think he's really a type B guy, but I appreciated his lack of desperation on the whole thing. And, it's like they'll find you if you're a guy, everyone's going to know it. I mean,
Yeah.
they had the gentleman at St. Paul, gosh, it must be as many as 3 years now, he's the kid from Canada that came and ended up going to Fresno State. And it was kind of a no doubter. If there's any doubt in your mind, then just go do something else. You know what I mean? Or if there's any, hedge your bets a little bit. I love what Rick said. I was trying to bait him with these concepts of what's the flow chart on getting recruited. And he's like, or what's it going to be like in COVID? He's like, what's your grades? And I know that we throw that around a lot, but I think for him, that was a genuine answer. Like,
well, it's true.
That's how come James Sams could go to Occidental, because he was a 4.0 guy in college and high school, so now you have that opportunity,
No, without a doubt. I mean, that was the thing is, those guys would, once I answered the first couple of phone calls or saw them the first time, we didn't get Notre Dame's and those guys coming into our school, but we got a lot of the Division 2 and 3 schools, and and it was in the local schools that would come in and go,
right.
But it was the same thing is, I was trying to push the kid who had a 3.1, and he's a great kid and he's involved in this stuff, and they didn't even take a second look. If it's not a 3.5 or a 3.4 or whatever it was for that particular school, they just moved on, because there was somebody out there that had those kind of grades. And if there's anybody listening that has any misconception that my athletic ability is going to outweigh my ability to have grades, you better be a 5+ star athlete,
right?
Because otherwise there's somebody just like you that has better grades than you do if you're below a 3.0.
And you're